The city of Alabastron glittered. It was the heart of the Cathar Empire, a world where every surface gleamed, every corner was perfect. The Cathar themselves were tall and slender, with pale skin that seemed to glow faintly. They moved with a quiet grace, their silver robes whispering over floors so clean you could see your reflection. For centuries, they had built a society based on purity. Germs, dirt, and disorder were things of the past, banished by amazing science and a deep dislike for anything messy. Their homes, their ships, even their thoughts, were meant to be orderly and clean. The Cathar believed their way was the best. They looked out at the galaxy, at other species living on dusty planets, breathing unfiltered air, and felt a shiver of distaste. How could anyone live in such chaos? Their own doctors had conquered every known Cathar illness. Their bodies were temples of health, thanks to careful genetic planning and environments so sterile that a stray microbe would cause a panic. Then came the Crimson Scourge. It started as a rumor, a whisper from the far edges of Cathar space. A trading ship, the Star Pearl, had gone silent. Then another. Soon, reports trickled in of a strange sickness. It began with a fever, then a rash that glowed an angry red, like a stain spreading across the skin. Within days, even the strongest Cathar would weaken, their perfect bodies failing. Their advanced medical scanners, usually so good at finding problems, showed nothing they understood. Their medicines, designed for known enemies, were useless against this new terror. The plague moved faster than any ship. It jumped from planet to planet, slipping past their careful defenses as if they weren't even there. Panic, an emotion the Cathar prided themselves on controlling, began to ripple through their perfect cities. The gleaming halls of Alabastron started to feel less like a fortress and more like a beautiful trap. Elder Valeria stood in the High Council chamber. The air, usually filled with calm debate, was thick with fear. Holographic screens around him showed grim numbers. Millions infected. Hundreds of thousands dead. And the numbers were climbing, faster and faster. Valerius was one of the oldest and wisest Cathar. His face, usually smooth and calm, was etched with worried lines that seemed to deepen by the hour. "Our best physicians have tried everything," reported a medical chief, his voice trembling. "The pathogen, it is unlike anything we have encountered. Our immune enhancers, our viral suppressants, they do nothing. It's as if our bodies have forgotten how to fight." Valerius looked at the images of his people suffering, dying, in their pristine, sterile environments. For generations, they had trusted in their purity, their control. Now, that very purity seemed to be their downfall. The Crimson Scourge didn't care how clean their cities were. It didn't care how advanced their science was supposed to be. It simply spread, a red tide of death washing over the Cathar Empire. His own daughter, Lyra, a bright young scientist, had been assigned to the outer research post on Xylos Prime. He hadn't heard from her in 3 rotations. The thought sent a cold spike of a very un-Cathar-like emotion through him. Dread. What are we missing? Valerius whispered more to himself than to the council. The gleaming, perfect city outside the window suddenly felt fragile, like a glass sculpture about to shatter. Their way of life, their very survival, was threatened by an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't understand, and certainly couldn't stop. The Cathar, for all their advancements, were helpless. Far away from the glittering, terrified cities of the Cathar, the medical research station Hope of Sol drifted in the quiet darkness of space. It wasn't sleek or gleaming like a Cathar vessel. It was a bit lumpy, with extra modules bolted on here and there over the years. Inside, things were clean, but not too clean. It was the faint, familiar smell of sterilized equipment mixed with old coffee and the general hum of people busy at work. Dr. Iris Thorne leaned over a holographic display, her brow furrowed. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and her white lab coat had a faint stain that might have been yesterday's lunch. She was the head of virology, the study of viruses, and known for being brilliant, practical, and not easily scared. Around her, a small team worked. There was Ben, a young geneticist who always looked like he'd just woken up, and Priya, a immunologist who specialized in how bodies fight disease. Human medicine was different from Cathar medicine. Humans knew they weren't perfect. They had lived on Earth for thousands of years, a planet teeming with bacteria, viruses, and all sorts of tiny living things. They got sick, they got better. Their bodies had learned to fight. Their science was good, very good, but it was built on understanding that life was messy and full of surprises. They didn't try to get rid of every germ, they tried to understand them and live with them, or fight them when necessary. News from the wider galaxy reached the Hope of Sol in bits and pieces. Garbled messages, official warnings from distant star systems, and then more urgent distress calls. They started hearing about something called the Crimson Scourge. The details were few, but the fear in the voices was clear. "Another one," Ben said quietly, looking up from his console. "A whole Cathar colony on Cygnus X-4 just went silent. That's the 3rd this week." Iris frowned. The Cathar, they're usually so self-contained, and their medical tech is supposed to be top-notch. She pulled up what little data they had. Fast spreading, high fatality. No known treatment. Sounds nasty. Priya tapped her chin. If it's bypassing Cathar defenses, it must be something very unusual, or something that preys on a specific weakness they have. Just then, an alarm chirped. A ship was approaching. Not a human ship. It was long, silver, and impossibly sleek. Cathar. A cold, precise voice came over the comms. Unidentified station, this is the Cathar diplomatic vessel Purity's Vigil. We have detected your presence. You are ordered to maintain strict isolation. Do not attempt to approach Cathar territories or vessels. Iris stepped forward. This is Dr. Iris Thorne of the Terran Research Station, Hope of Sol. We've heard reports of a serious epidemic in Cathar space. Is there any information you can share, or any assistance we can offer? There was a pause. The voice that replied was even colder. Your assistance is not required, Terran. Your species is biologically unrefined. You're a potential contamination vector. The greatest assistance you can offer is to remain where you are and interact with no one. This is a directive. The line went dead. Iris stared at the screen where the Cathar ship's image had been, then whistled softly. Charming, biologically unrefined. That's a new one. Priya shook her head. They sound scared and arrogant. Not a good combination. Iris felt a knot of concern tighten in her chest. The Cathar might look down on humans, call them unclean. But if something was terrifying the Cathar, it was serious. And if they were too proud to even share information, they were making a dangerous mistake. The Crimson Scourge didn't care about politeness or who thought they were superior. The Crimson Scourge raged across Cathar space like a wildfire. Planet after planet fell silent. The gleaming cities became ghost towns, their perfect streets empty, their sterile home filled with a terrible stillness. The Cathar, who prided themselves on order and control, found their society breaking apart. Supply ships stopped running. Communication networks faltered. Fear was the only thing that spread faster than the disease. Alder Valerius felt like he was living in a nightmare. The High Council chamber, once a place of calm decisions, was now a crisis center filled with desperate voices and flickering screens showing nothing but bad news. His people were dying, and everything they had ever believed in seemed useless. Their advanced technology, their pure environments, their superior intellect, none of it mattered. His thoughts kept returning to his daughter, Lyra. She was stationed on Xylos Prime, a research outpost dedicated to studying ancient alien ruins. It was remote, but well supplied. Or it had been. Now all communication was lost. He clung to a tiny sliver of hope that its very remoteness might have protected her. Meanwhile, Lyra, alive but weak, was in the Xylos Prime medical bay. The small outpost had been hit hard. Many were dead. She had a raging fever, and the telltale crimson rash was starting to bloom on her pale arm. She was a scientist, even now. With shaking hands, she worked at a data terminal, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The station's main medical AI was overwhelmed, simply cataloging deaths. But Lyra was looking at something different. She was pulling up galactic records, anything she could find on plagues, on species biology. It doesn't make sense, she rasped to the mostly empty room. Our systems, they should detect it, fight it. But they didn't. It was as if their bodies welcomed the invader. Then she saw it. A tiny piece of data, almost invisible. A report from a distant, mixed-species trading post. The Cathar there had died quickly. But a few other species, ones known for living in less pristine conditions, had gotten sick, but some had survived. Their symptoms were less severe. And then there were the humans. She searched for data on them. There were a few small human colonies scattered in the Attic and Traverse, a sector the Cathar mostly ignored. No reports of mass deaths from them. Nothing. Silence. It was a wild thought born of desperation. Could it be that the Cathar's very purity, their super clean bodies, were the problem? Could it be that species used to a bit of biological chaos were somehow better off? The idea was repulsive. It went against everything she'd ever been taught. Back on the Hope of Sol, Dr. Iris Thorne and her team were also working hard. They didn't have much information, just the little bits they could gather from panic signals and old Cathar medical journals, which were surprisingly unhelpful on this new plague. Look at this, Iris said, pointing to a diagram of a simplified Cathar immune cell. It's highly specialized, designed to target specific threats with incredible efficiency. But what if it encounters something totally new, something it's not programmed for? Priya nodded slowly. It might not recognize it as a threat at all, or it might overreact in the wrong way, causing more damage. She thought about human history. We've had plagues sweep through populations with no prior exposure. The results were devastating, but eventually, those who survived had immune systems that learned, adapted. The Cathar, Iris mused, they've engineered out all the background noise from their systems. They live in bubbles. What if this scourge is something that a more robust, more exercised immune system could handle, or at least fight more effectively? It was a theory, a long shot. On Alabastron, Alder Valerius felt the walls closing in. His advisors offered no solutions. His medical experts were broken, defeated. Then, a faint signal reached him. It was from Xylos Prime. From Lyra. Her message was weak, broken by static, but her words were clear enough. She spoke of her strange theory of the unclean species of the humans. She urged him, pleaded with him to consider the unthinkable. Valerius felt a wave of nausea. To turn to the humans? The primitive, messy Terrans. It was an admission of utter failure, a disgrace. But then he thought of Lyra, her voice faint but fierce with conviction. He thought of his dying people. What was Cathar Pride worth in the face of extinction? With a heavy heart and a deep sense of shame, he gave the order. Prepare a ship, we will go to the human station, we will observe. He couldn't bring himself to say they would ask for help. Not yet. But in the depths of his despair, a tiny, unwanted seed of Lyra's desperate hope had taken root. The Cathar ship, the emissary of light, shimmered into existence near the Hope of Sol. It was smaller than the warship that had issued the warning, but no less imposing in its perfect, sterile design. A shuttle, equally pristine, detached and glided towards the human station. Inside the Hope of Sol's main docking bay, Dr. Aris Thorne waited with her team. They had tidied up as best they could, but the station still felt lived in, a stark contrast to what they expected from a Cathar. The shuttle door hissed open. Elder Valerius emerged, followed by two other Cathar in severe, silver robes. Their tall, slender forms exuded an air of disapproval. Valerius's pale face was a mask of controlled distaste as his eyes scanned the human environment, the scuffed floor panels, the exposed conduit that Ben was always meaning to fix, the faint but undeniable smell of recycled air that wasn't quite Cathar pure. He tried not to visibly recoil. Dr. Thorne, Valerius said, his voice flat and cold. We're here, as per my daughter Lyra's unusual suggestion, to observe your methods regarding biological threats. He avoided the wordplay as if saying it might contaminate him. Iris met his gaze calmly. Elder Valerius, welcome to the Hope of Sol. We understand your people are facing a severe crisis. We call it the Crimson Scourge. One of Valerius's aides made a small, choked sound, quickly suppressed. We believe we might have a hypothesis. Iris continued, leading them towards the station's small briefing room. It also served as their coffee room. Priya quickly hid a half-eaten protein bar. In the briefing room, Iris didn't waste time. She brought up holographic displays showing human immune responses, historical data on Earth pandemics, and her team's analysis of what little they knew about the Crimson Scourge. Our theory, Elder Valerius, Iris explained, is that the Crimson Scourge is a novel pathogen, something your species has no natural defense against. More than that, we suspect that your highly refined immune systems, living in such sterile environments, are unprepared. They lack the broad-spectrum resilience that comes from constant exposure to a diverse microbial world. Valerius listened, his expression unreadable, though a muscle twitched in his jaw. Are you suggesting, Doctor, that our purity, our very way of life, is a weakness? The question was laced with icy disbelief. In this specific instance, against this specific threat, yes, that is what the evidence suggests, Iris said gently but firmly. Human immune systems are, for lack of a better word, constantly in training. We get colds, we get the flu, we encounter countless harmless microbes every day. It makes our defenses more adaptable, more ready for the unexpected. Priya stepped forward. We believe the Scourge pathogen targets a pathway that is unprotected in Cathar biology precisely because it's usually kept so clean. Your systems don't recognize it until it's too late, and then they might even overreact in a damaging way. The Cathar looked horrified. The idea of intentionally exposing oneself to impurities, of relying on such a primitive biological response, was deeply offensive to their core beliefs. And what is your proposed solution, Doctor? Valerius asked, his voice dripping with skepticism. That we should all go and roll in mud? Iris ignored the sarcasm. Not exactly. We propose something more scientific. We believe that antibodies developed from a recovered human, or even a carefully developed vaccine based on how human immune systems fight off similar viral structures, could offer protection. It could teach your bodies how to recognize and neutralize the scourge. Introduce human biological material into a Cathar, one of the aides gasped, looking faint. Just then, a priority message flashed on Valerius's personal datapad. His face, already pale, turned ashen. He swayed slightly. Silas primed the medical bay has been breached. Lyra, she has succumbed to the advanced stages of the scourge. They give her hours. Iris saw the profound grief crack through Valerius's Cathar composure. In that moment, he wasn't an arrogant alien leader, but a father facing an unbearable loss. Elder Valerius, Iris said, her voice soft but urgent. We have a small, experimental batch of broad-spectrum antiviral serum that's derived from pooled human plasma, designed to boost response to novel viral threats that's untested on Cathar. It's a desperate chance, but if Lyra is as close to death as you say... Valerius stared at her, his perfect Cathar world crumbling around him. His daughter. His people. His pride. He looked at the earnest, determined faces of these unclean humans. Their station was messy, their biology unrefined, but they were offering a sliver of hope where his own kind had found none. My daughter, he choked out. If there is any chance, any at all? Iris nodded. We can transmit the synthesis protocol for the serum to your ship's medical facilities immediately, and if you can get a sample of the scourge to us, we can begin work on a targeted counter-agent. But for Lyra, now the serum is the only immediate option. Valerius looked at his aides, then back at Eris. The revulsion was still there, but it was now overshadowed by desperate, terrible hope. "To it," he commanded, his voice barely a whisper. "Transmit the data, and may whatever forces guide this universe forgive me for this necessity." The next few hours were a blur of frantic activity. On the Hope of Sol, Eris and her team worked tirelessly, guiding the Cathar medical officers on the emissary of light via a secure comlink. The Cathar doctors, accustomed to precise, elegant procedures, struggled with the crude to them but effective human methods of synthesizing the serum. There were moments of doubt, of near panic on the Cathar side, but Eris's calm, confident voice kept them focused. Aboard the Cathar ship, Elder Valerius watched through a sterile viewport as his medical team, garbed in layers of protective gear, administered the human-derived serum to his daughter, Lyra. She was terrifyingly still, the crimson rush covering most of her frail body. Her breathing was shallow, almost non-existent. He felt a profound sense of shame mixed with a desperate, illogical hope. He had condemned his child to an unknown fate based on the theories of these primitives. Hours crawled by. The Hope of Sol team waited, monitoring the fragmented biodata Lyra's Cathar physicians sent them. Then, Ben, his usually sleepy eyes wide, let out a whoop. "Dr. Thorne, look at this. Her cell regeneration markers are up, inflammatory responses localizing. It's not systemic anymore." Priya leaned in. Her lymphocyte count is stabilizing. The serum, it seems to be giving her immune system the blueprint it needed. It's fighting back. Actually fighting. On the emissary of light, a Cathar medic, his voice trembling with disbelief, reported to Valerius. "Elder, her fever is down by 2 degrees. The rash appears to be receding in some areas. It's unbelievable." Valerius felt his knees weaken. He gripped the edge of the console for support. Could it be true? Could this unclean human remedy actually be working? Over the next cycle, Lyra's improvement was undeniable. Slowly, agonizingly, she began to recover. The Cathar medical team, initially skeptical and disgusted, watched in stunned silence as the human serum did what all their advanced science could not. The news spread like a shockwave through the surviving Cathar command structure. The primitive humans held the key. A massive galaxy-wide effort began. The Hope of Sol became the nerve center, with Eris Thorne and her small team guiding Cathar scientists now humbled and desperate to learn on how to mass-produce the serum and, later, a more refined vaccine developed from Lyra's own recovering immune response combined with human research. Human medical ships, once viewed with suspicion, were now desperately welcomed into Cathar space, bringing expertise and a biological resilience the Cathar had scorned. The Crimson Scourge, which had brought the mighty Cathar Empire to its knees, was finally brought under control. Millions had died, but billions were saved. Elder Valerius, his face etched with new lines of grief but also a profound humility, stood before Dr. Eris Thorne once more, this time on the bridge of the Hope of Sol. Lyra, pale but recovering, stood beside him, her eyes full of quiet gratitude. "Dr. Thorne," Valerius began, his voice no longer cold but filled with a raw emotion the Cathar rarely showed. "My people, we owe you a debt that can never be repaid. We were arrogant, we were blind. In our pursuit of what we called perfection, we made ourselves vulnerable to your unrefined biology, your messy, adaptable science. It was our salvation." Eris offered a small, weary smile. "We're just glad we could help. Elder Valerius, disease doesn't care about philosophy or how clean your cities are. Sometimes resilience comes from unexpected places." Lyra stepped forward. "We thought your ways were primitive. Now, we see a strength we never understood, a strength born from experience, from facing the universe as it is, not as we wish it to be." The Cathar Empire would never be the same. Their worldview had been shattered and rebuilt. They had learned a hard lesson. That true strength wasn't about eliminating every imperfection, but about having the resilience to face the unknown. A new era of cautious, but respectful, interaction began between humans and Cathar. Humans didn't gloat, they offered partnership, sharing their knowledge freely. As Valerius and Lyra prepared to leave, Valerius looked around the slightly cluttered bridge of the Hope of Sol. It still wasn't to Cathar standards of cleanliness, but now he saw it differently. He saw a place of ingenuity, of life, of the very messiness that had saved his species. The Cathar began to cautiously re-evaluate their relationship with the natural universe, and humanity's surprising, vital place within it. The galaxy was far more complex and far more wonderfully imperfect than they had ever imagined.